Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion, and our second hour is general discussion on Saturdays. So this is a 2 hours or up to 2 hours, depends on how many questions you ask. And you can ask questions through Makana. You can vote on those questions up and down, or you can use this little QR code here and use that to jump into askofficehours.global. And if you go there any time of the day, in fact, a lot of our questions this morning are all from that little, this little thing right here. So go to askofficehours.global any time of the day, ask the questions that you have, and then we'll feed them back into the system the next day. So if you're in Makana, you can vote on those questions, and that tells us what order you'd like us to talk to them about them. So throw those in, and let's go ahead and jump into the questions. CJ, what do we have?
First question comes in from Rick Gray in Washington, D.C. How do editors charge for the commercial? I've seen editors charge by the minute or by the hour. Is there a formula for the cost editors may charge? And this is QR code. Oh. I've seen it a couple different ways and done it a couple different ways. Folks are either going to sell it by the project or they're going to sell it by the amount of labor that went into it. The key thing here, though, isn't so much of a formula of how long it's going to take you, because different editors are going to work at different speeds. You really need to understand your market and what are people expecting to pay in whatever metro or whatever area that you're in, and then figure out how much is that time worth to you. I have a feeling that if you're just getting started, there are going to be some projects that are going to have to be a little bit of passion projects for you, or you're going to need to spend more time on, because the way that you're going to get into a market, if you're brand new, is by being a little less money.
Yeah, especially if you're, one of the advantages to go to school is that you get lots of time to do lots of things for free. And so if you don't go to school and you decide you want to be an editor, you still need that time to do things for free. So find things that you can do for folks, whether it's nonprofits or other folks that you care about, things that you care about, and you got to burn some time. You got to get good at it. You don't really want, the problem really when you have people pay for things is they expect it to work every single time, and you may not be able to solve that immediately, or you may just put a bunch of time in. The next thing you'll do is spend a little bit more time. You'll start charging. I recommend thinking about charging per project as opposed to per hour, because you don't know how long you're going to do it in. And it may mean that you make $5 an hour on the first couple jobs, but you don't want to declare $50 an hour, $100 an hour, and then charge them a number that would be higher than if they just hired someone that was $200 an hour. They make a lot of decisions about you pretty quickly. So you'd rather say, okay, well, it's $1,000. Now, once you get to a certain level of an editor, then it's just hourly. You just go, this is how much. You can do whatever you want, but you can guess how many hours it's going to take. And if you guess, you have to really do it in that, unless the client changes something. So you're still on a fixed cost, but you are guessing like this is going to be $18,000 or $12,000 or $1,200. But you're taking your hourly and you're multiplying it by the number of hours, and then hopefully doubling that, because that's how long, doubling or quadrupling it, depending on how accurate you are, you'll be somewhere between half. You'll guess somewhere between half and a quarter of what it'll actually take. As you do more of these, you get better at it. So those are the things to kind of, think about there. Yeah, go ahead, CJ.
The other thing that you need to think about if you're just getting started is when you encounter a challenge that you're trying to solve and you get to a skill that you should have, or someone in your position who's charging money for a service would be expected to have, and you kind of have to stop the clock. If you go down a rabbit hole to figure out how to do something, at some point you have to have a moral compass of, is that really the client's problem or is that my problem? The other thing that I wanted to mention is you also have to look at the relationship piece. If this is a client who is potential repeat business, you're going to want to give away a little bit more early, because you got to feed them to make sure that they keep coming back and coming back. And if you take a little bit lower of an hourly rate on this job, you make it up on the next job, and then you have a relationship of continuous repeat business.
Yeah, and one of the things we do a lot of is that we might eat the margin on the first couple of shows with a client as we figure things out. And then what happens is that as we know it, we become more efficient. We don't change. We don't say, oh, the price is now 30% less because we're 30% more efficient. We mix that extra margin. We add some quality, and we get a little bit more margin. And so sometimes, when I say we add quality, sometimes we only add quality to that for years to build that, and we keep making a margin and we keep paying for it. But sometimes we sit there and just keep adding what we can do to it for a very long period of time because we're investing in that process and we're hoping to use what we did there. The next client that comes in pays for that knowledge, like pays a lot more for that knowledge. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Every project that I've ever seen has some sort of disagreement or request or change. Make sure you clearly document expectations as well as how you're going to put those into the contract. So if you're doing by project, limit the number of changes that you're going to do for the client in the project.
Yeah, if you're doing a fixed number, there's a phrase you want to think about. It's called non-recursive edits. So basically what that means is you'll say 3 rounds of non-recursive edits. And what that means in a short thing, you can always decide to let them have more if they want or that you want. But what it means is that if you change something, if you make the first time they see the edit, they make a list of the things they want to change. That everything after that is limited to those changes. They can't decide they want to change the beginning without a change order. They can't decide they want to change something that wasn't brought up in that area because there's going to be a rounds of edits. So if you fix all the edits that they had in the first round, the second round is only fixes to those fixes, and the third round is fixes to those fixes. And that's what we call a non-recursive. If you're doing a fixed, that becomes important. If you're doing hourly, you don't care. It's just like you turn the clock on and you start going however long they want to make those changes. It's funny. I always find it funny when I'm talking to editors who are getting paid by the hour when they get frustrated that the client is making changes. I'm like, just roll with it. We know that it's going to take more hours for you to do that. Go ahead, CJ.
One more thing that I think is really important as they're asking for things, as clients are asking for things, it's your responsibility to make sure that even if you are getting paid by the hour, reset the expectation for, okay, this is what this is going to cost. Is what you're trying to achieve worth the invest? Are you going to get return on the time investment and the money investment to fix this thing? Like you can do anything you want. The question is it worth it for what you're trying to do? Do you have the budget?
Yeah. And you really have to have that conversation of like, hey, here's a good idea, or they come with a good idea. That's great. And I never say, oh, we can't do it. Like, we don't have the budget for that. We can't do that. I always go, that's great. Here's how much that'll cost. And sometimes it's zero, or that'll cost a little. I try to find the most efficient way to do it. But it is something that you want to say that's yes, and like this is the impact to time and money that it has.
Yeah, and and I think you're respected for that. Get your integrity gets you that next business. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
All right, next question is from Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada. Alex, on Friday's discussion, you mentioned that you hope to have at least 3 versions of the OH system in place by the new year. With multiple systems in play, could a secondary one be used for training in parallel with a live show? Another QR code.
Absolutely, and we hope to do that. So if we get all 3 systems up and running, we definitely hope to have a backup one that people are able to test on and even experiment with. So not just learning, but experimenting with a different way to approach the show, et cetera. Next question.
Next question is another QR code from Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada, USA. Planning ahead 8-hour gig outside with a Mix Pre 3, an iPhone 14 Pro, an SM58, and my Sony 6507 headphones. When it's break time, I want to listen to music from my phone to my headphones in stereo. How can I? A dongle, an extra cable or connector?
I go ahead, CJ.
Was just going to say, maybe this is too simplistic to think about, but the little $9 dongle from Apple that goes lightning to 3.5 millimeter is your best friend. It will work if you go into double dongleville as you upgrade your phone. If you want to go USB-C to lightning and then lightning to 3.5 millimeter, but you also get, they also have a new version of that. That's a direct connect.
Go, John.
I'm sure there's a technical way to accomplish what you're trying to do, but I think it's a terrible idea. And CJ, I think, was hinting to it a little bit. You're introducing risk to a system that's a production system for 15 minutes of your own personal enjoyment. I would just bring a separate set of headphones and plug it straight into my iPhone if I needed that.
Yeah, or I wouldn't use my I wouldn't use my production rig on my break. I think that's kind of what John's alluding to. Like, just have something else there that you're going to listen to. Once your rig is running during a production, it needs to stay in the state that it's in. Yeah, go ahead, CJ.
Yeah, and if the iPhone 14 is your camera, bring your iPod Classic from 09.
Exactly. Next question.
Next question is from Punsak Dorji from Dharamshala, India. Can you cite some examples of situations where you will reap the benefit of having the 2ME constellation HD? And is there a quality difference in using Teradek VidiU Pro or WebPresenter HD as an encoder?
Go ahead, Samuel.
Yeah, well, the benefits of having the constellation over something like ATEM Mini is that you have, first of all, it's rack mountable, and you have a second ME, and then you have a lot more outputs compared to something like the SDI version of the ATEM Mini. You only have four outputs, and here you have a whole bunch of outputs that you can, I believe it's 8 on the 2ME. So
I think it's 10, actually.
Okay, 10, and it's a lot more flexible, but you don't have the encoding options like you have on the ATEM Mini. As for the encoders, I'm not so familiar with the Teradek, but I know the WebPresenter is a solid option.
Yeah, I don't know as much about the WebPresenter. I mean, we haven't tried to stream from the WebPresenter as much as we have from the ATEMs. I will say that I have some concerns about, now that we're streaming with an ATEM, I have concerns about streaming with an ATEM because it appears to be crushing the blacks a little bit, like we see when we go into Zoom. We're seeing that in the actual encode. So we have some concerns, about that right now. We're trying to figure out make sure that it's being caused by the ATEM itself. But it does seem like the color space is doing something a little bit interesting. As far as the 2ME goes, having all those inputs and outputs is super useful. It's really, really powerful. So I would definitely, I would really think about that. You also have a super source. So that super source is not in the 1ME or it is in the Mini Extreme, but it's not in the 1ME, and you have a lot more I/O than the Mini Extreme. The other thing you're going to use that super source, or not the super source, but the second ME, is often to do sub edits. So let's say you have a super source where you have, let's see if I can pull this up here. Like imagine a super source where you have you have one small window and then you have a big window here. You see this in the news a lot. And what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to cut this. So what you do is your 2ME is serving this. So you're actually able to sit there and cut that second ME, and you're cutting what's in this square, but it's being delivered. So you're not trying to change the input of that. You're cutting the show, possibly even with lower, with graphics and stuff like that, upstream graphics get inserted inside of this, and then inside of that piece. And so that's a way that you use that 2ME, and it's really powerful. I would consider, in most cases when I'm doing work, like when we actually do a show for somebody, I'm considering a 2ME kind of the minimum. So next question.
Next question comes into us from Adrian Watkins in Wellington, New Zealand. What is the minimum hardware to satisfy the Dante clocking requirement? For example, would an Avio adapter be sufficient? Another QR.
Good, Samuel.
Yes, the Avio adapter will be efficient. It's not the highest quality clock ever. You can get higher quality encoding or Dante chips, but it will definitely satisfy the need for the Dante clocking.
Next question.
Next question is coming in from Steve Uroff in Madison, Wisconsin. Does the panel know of any resources that deep dive into the technology that let Peter Jackson improve the audio tracks for the Get Back documentary and the Now and Then single release?
Yeah, I haven't seen any real deep dives into this. So far, they've just said, we used AI and we put this together, and I've watched a bunch of the little behind the scenes of that process, and a crazy video. The Vivo video that they put out, I think yesterday or the day before, is a crazy, it's like they are comping history and current and semi-history. And so, but no one's really talked exactly how they did it. Next question.
Next question from Bet Ballou in Appleton, Wisconsin. LoudLAB offers a bundle with SoundDesk and an audio metering app called Sonic Atom. Has anyone used this in their audio editing production pipeline for analysis? And is it worth purchasing for their bundle, or would you recommend different metering apps?
Yeah, so we have a bunch of copies of Sonic Atom. In fact, we got into Sonic Atom before we got into SoundDesk. So we've used it a fair bit. I will say it's not as good as Spectre, which is sold by Zynaptic. So Zynaptic, they make plugins, but they bought a couple companies, and they bought the company that made Spectre. I don't think it's as good as Spectre. Spectre has a couple tools, and the way the controls of the settings are better and everything else, but it's a lot more expensive. So SoundDesk ATEM is a more cost-effective way to do that, and we use it. We don't use it as much for post-production, but we use it for live all the time. So there's a lot of meters in there that we'll use for levels and spectrograms and spectrographs and leisure. I don't know if they call it a leisure zoom meter, but it's a leisure zoom meter. So those are a bunch of metering that it does. Again, I wish someone would. I wish Nobe Omniscope would just do it for us, but they haven't yet. Go ahead, CJ.
The other thing I'll mention is I didn't have SoundDesk or Sonic ATEM prior to Chris's lab earlier in the week, and then when I went to download SoundDesk, I was like, oh, look at this nice Sonic ATEM thing. This is fun. And I saw the bundle and was almost going to hit the buy button, and then I stopped myself and saw that both of them are available on the Mac App Store. So if you like to use the Mac App Store to manage your licensing, which I do because you're moving around computers, resetting stuff up, don't want to find that email, you can get them both individually in the App Store. And I started playing with both of them yesterday, and I think Sonic ATEM's pretty slick.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is good, and it looks pretty. It doesn't have. Again, I would say if I had never seen Spectre, I would think that Sonic ATEM was perfect. Next question.
Next question from Ian Alford in London. Is there a cheap go-to shotgun mic for on-location filming?
I think that the one that we've used the most in the past has been an NTG2. So we're trying to do something cost-effective. It's in the $200 or $300 range. You're not going to get anything cheaper than that. So I think that I don't think you're going to get any good shotgun mic cheaper than an NTG2. That's by Rode. Next question. Sorry.
All good. Next question from Simon Ray in Midlands, UK. Are there any tools to check a QR code to see if a site like QR Code Monster adds undesirable items to their code? And there's a link.
Yeah, there are some. I'm trying to think. I think there's a website that's like QR Reader, and I can't think of what it is, but there is a website out there that you can throw a QR code in, and it just shows you the raw, like, this is what this QR code says. And I don't know exactly where. I know I've found it in the past. Go ahead, CJ.
The other thing that I would say is when you hover over a QR code, if you're using your iPhone and the in-camera app, it comes up with a little link that you can click. I'm pretty sure you can expand that link to actually look at the URL before you go there. I treat QR code links that I'm not familiar with the source almost like a hyperlink in an email. I would rather copy and paste the link before I, go into the unknown.
I'll have to look at that. I thought that it showed you where it resolved to, but it doesn't necessarily show you where you're going through. So, but that'd be an interesting thing to look at. I think that when that pops up, I don't know if it gives you, because I've seen ones that do insert things into your system, and it shows the end result, but there was something in between that it didn't. Next question.
Alrighty, next question from Adrian Watkins, again in Wellington, New Zealand. Fenwick'd my audio today, love the verb, and went to order a controller, but there are none in the country. Maybe an office hours bulk buying consortium next time. There's a featured kit we can't live without. We
have been talking about that. The problem is we can't agree on what that kit would have. So there's lots of, I even got a new one. Hold on. I got this one to add to the other one, which is, this is the little Behringer X-Touch. And this one, what I'm interested in testing here is that these have rotary dials and there's no sliders, which means that theoretically when it's talking to us something, it'll tell me where it is, but it can always be accurate where the sliders may or may not be accurate. So anyway, we're going to see. It has one big slider right here. It's cool. Anyway, so that's I'm going to probably put them together and have one do one thing and one do the other. Next question.
From Craig Godoki in Toronto, Canada, the ProConvert Audio DX looks like a handy problem solver. Anyone try one yet?
I'll go with CJ.
Yeah, I brought this up just to take a look at it. It looks like it has balanced in and out on the one side of the, let me bring that up, balanced audio in and out on the one side of the box, and then just a PoE Ethernet and a USB-B on the other side, just for reference. I don't have any experience with it, but I just wanted to, for the sake of context, let everybody know what he's talking about.
Whoa. So it's, what the?
He offers a seamless bridge between analog audio software and IP standards, including Dante, NDI, SRT, and more. So can it do them both at the same time? That'd be pretty awesome.
It's just audio. That's a really slick little box. As far as in, a lot of times when we get stuff, it's in or out. I think there's an Avio that might be in and out as well. I'm not sure, but let's see. And it looks like it has. Wait, in that picture.
I'll throw it into chat.
Is it AE? Oh, it's a TRRRS.
Whoa.
So it's its own cable, I think, that they have there to give you. So it's not, because when I saw 2 ins and 2 outs, I was thinking that, well, that's going to be AES, but it's not. It's balanced. It's just standard analog, and it's balanced, and it is. Let's see. Oh yeah, there's the cable. That's kind of worries me a little bit looking at the cable. It's got its own custom cable though. Yeah, that's the. I wonder, what's the price on this thing? I didn't see the price. Hold on, I bet you we can find that out really quickly.
Oh no, a website where we can't find the buy link. What is going on?
Yeah, I know exactly. They don't want to sell you it. They just want to make you want
you
it.
drool.
$500 for. There's some for $425, I think. No, that's NDI over HDMI. Yeah, it's $519. So it's efficient, although you could probably get very close to buying all the Avios that would do the same. It would actually be less expensive to buy Avios than it would be to buy that box. So the box is cool, but it would be, the Avios would be cheaper. Go ahead, Samuel.
Yeah, I was just going to echo that. I thought it was interesting. And that the advantage over the Avios is that it can also do NDI audio and convert that to Dante. It seems like, or balanced, but I haven't used it, or I believe it's a new box.
Yeah, absolutely. Looks cool though. Next question.
Next question from John Snyder in Reno, Nevada. And here on the panel, how can a person control a looping animation for a 3D object in PowerPoint and Keynote?
Good, John.
Yeah, my question is, I've been playing with 3D objects in both Keynote and PowerPoint, and they, just like everything else, they decide to treat everything 90% the same, and it's the 10% difference I'm trying to track down. So in either of them, you can put in a 3D object, and those objects can have animations, and they're usually some cute little loop of some sort. In Keynote, it always plays the loop. So if the slide's on the screen, it's looping the animation. So if an object has multiple animations associated with it, I don't see a way to choose a specific animation you want it to do or to change it. In PowerPoint, it has a menu to choose which animation you want to play, and you treat it like any other animation. You program it into the animation pane, but it doesn't go between slides. And so like both of them have terrible use cases for some reason. I don't know if there's a way to control it on either side outside of those.
I think that there is not enough of us doing it and then complaining about it yet for them to fix it. And so I think that they're like, the problem that, PowerPoint has had this in there for years, and there just aren't that many people using it. And a lot of that has to do with, I think the creation process has been difficult. And so I think that, we're going to see Apple spend more energy, I think probably than Microsoft did on making sure that the creation tools work better. But that's the real issue, is creation tools of setting that up. And then the next problem is that I don't think you have access to those tools yet. I will say that Keynote is brand new, and my guess is that every year we'll see a bunch of things. And one thing to remember is that there's inside a Keynote, there is a feedback under the file, I think, send feedback to Apple. I have sent feedback and had the team ping me like, hey, can you send us a file, or can you tell us exactly what's happening? They read them. They definitely read them, and they don't always respond. Admittedly, I may send, on any project, I may send 2 or 3 suggestions that I'm working on. Like, hey, you're really good if I did this, and hey, I'm still looking for this. And so I use that feedback all the time, probably more in Keynote than anything else. So I'm sure they have some like filter for me, like, let's only do that if we have enough time to really look at all of his suggestions. But I have all these suggestions for Keynote because I use it probably more than the other app. Fortunately and unfortunately, like I feel like I should be using Cinema 4D or Resolve, but I spend a lot of time in Keynote, and so I'm constantly sending things. But our job, if you're watching it and you're doing, is to use the 3D objects like John, see what's missing, and send them feedback. And the more detailed you are, like, this is what it does, this is what I'd like it to do, this is the easier it is for them to think about. But they're pretty responsive. I would definitely think about that. Next question.
Ian Alford from London, would you shoot log on an A73 for short films? The A73 is only 8-bit, and that seems a problem.
Go ahead, Samuel.
Yeah, this is a A7 III. But the thing that he's asking about doing log on 8-bit camera, you can do the S-log that Sony has, but you won't be able to grade it so much as if you have like a 10-bit. Then you can push it a lot further. As for what I do, I normally just shoot with the standard profile. And I'm actually don't like to grade colors. So good.
Yeah, the issue that you have with log is that the log curve, kind of goes up like this and goes long like this. And so what it's doing is by doing this really, really long curve, this logarithmic curve here, it basically means that it's protecting all these whites instead of going straight up. But the problem that you have is that the gradations of that, there's so little difference between every step from if you're looking at the brightness from here to here, there's almost no steps. And if you only have 256 steps per channel, you don't have a lot to represent. When you go to 10-bit, you have 4 times as much resolution to represent between these two gray values within that curve. And that's why 10-bit is so important. Log, you will get a little extra protection inside of the log from an 8-bit. But if you, as Samuel talked about a little bit, if you push that very hard, you're going to start to see banding. So that's where the step there's no steps to go from here to there, and so what you end up with is kind of a cliff. And so banding is what's most common in gradations, in all skies and gradients and soft colors that are lit to the side. All those things you'll start to see gradients in because there's no data between the two, and all it can do is just drop down to the next level. Next question.
Brett Below in Appleton, Wisconsin, comes into us asking, Cloudflare has released a post-mortem on this week's crushing 2-day outage. Were you affected by it, and has it prompted you to make any changes?
I haven't been able to look at the post-mortem. I think we should have been affected, and I guess the development team would have to let me know if we actually were, because we use Cloudflare, but I'm not sure what we are affected. We are affected, says Chad, or we were, or we are affected by the Cloudflare hit. I'm not sure what the impact was. I'll try to get some more information. That's a really useful, I don't know what happened. I mean, we use it to tunnel. So it does mean that when they're down, we would have trouble controlling the system. So it's I think that'll create a bunch of conversations on our side about backups. Some of the users were unable to access Universe interfaces. Yeah, so that was the issue. So our Universe interface leans on Cloudflare, and we were affected. But as you can see, there's a certain level of resiliency to what we do, and we were still able to have a show. Next question.
Next question's a QR code from Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. Is there a paper-bound book on the category of analog sound basics to get started that I can sit next to my iPad that I use for sticky notes and a glow draw for idea building?
Yeah, so sorry, my computer got a little... what you want to do is look for Focal Press. So Focal Press is going to have the kind of books that you're looking for. So look for Introduction to Audio or Fundamentals of Audio, and just do a search against Focal Press. They make almost all the audio books that are worth reading when it comes to audio and video basics. and fundamentals and so on and so forth. So I would do a search for focal press. I don't have a specific book for you, but I would look at that. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says, CJ, you mentioned that it is more convenient to purchase the LoudLAB apps in the Mac App Store. What have your experiences been with plugin compatibility? They told me that the Mac App Store versions may not work with non-sandbox compliant plugins.
Go ahead, CJ.
Yeah, this is an issue with a lot of apps that do low-level things that also want to have a Mac App Store version. They have to fork a little bit because of the restrictions that Apple puts on. Apple wants you to feel comfortable that anything that you download from the Mac App Store is vetted and it can't do something at a lower level without your knowledge. The trouble is, as creatives who are trying to use the computer for creative things, we want to get creative in ways that are outside of that sandbox. So because I just downloaded them yesterday, I don't have any experience directly with the plugins, but I would say if you need something, it's worth looking into before you pull the trigger on either or, and then you've got to balance, do I want the convenience of not needing to worry about licensing, or is there a plugin that I need to accomplish what I'm trying to do?
Yeah, we don't use them with any plugins, so I haven't really needed to think about that. That said, I will say I got them from the downloader from the app. There's certain programs like some audio video programs that if I know that they have another version, I tend to get that straight from them. I buy almost everything on the App Store like CJ. There's a couple of exceptions like Resolve. There's a Resolve version on the App Store. You should never buy that. I can never buy the Resolve. I don't even know why it's there, to be honest. The one you can buy the one that's for the iPad because you have to, but on the Mac you're not going to get the same app. So definitely keep that in mind. And a quick reminder that, of course, you can ask questions either using the askofficehours.global. You can do that any time of the day, and we'll feed those in. You can use this little QR code here, or you can throw them right into Makana and ask those questions. And make sure to vote on those questions as we go through. Next question.
Next question from Florence Donald in Silver Spring, Maryland. What is a lighting kit that can be used in a space that has glass walls? Need to be set up and not left up. The setup is for a weekly live stream where the talent is remote.
Well, the funny thing is that it's not the lighting that's going to be the problem with the glass walls. It's going to be your audio. Your audio is going to be very echoey there. So one thing to think about is when you do it, there's two things. If you have if you have the room with glass walls, really try to define two walls that you can't see. So you might have like these are the two live walls. And then you have two walls that aren't going to be seen. And what you're going to want to think about there is putting some kind of curtains here that are like 100% fullness or 75% fullness. So it's they've got lots of waves to them. Because if you've got a lot of hard edges, think about trying to muffle. You're not making it soundproof. You're just diffusing a lot of those sound waves so that they don't keep bouncing back and forth. That's going to make more of a difference than you have there. Now, the next thing you want to think about, look at the ceiling. So one of the things that we look at really quickly is what kind of ceiling do they have? If they have a traditional drop ceiling, and that's the one where you kind of have a, it's hung and it's here and it's got 2 foot, usually it's spread out 2 feet apart. And it's got what it looks like, what's holding it in is like a little T, the structure. Well, there's a thing called a scissor clip, and we use these a lot. When we see a standard drop ceiling, we use these little scissor clips, and you can get them at Film Tools. You can get them a lot of places, but that's where we buy them. And what they do is they scissor open, and they're a baby pin. So it's a 5-inch baby pin that hangs down from that scissor clip, and you put it up there, and you can attach an immense amount of weight to that thing. You'd be surprised at how good those. And then the other thing we look at is where we put them. There's a wire that's usually attached to the rebar or the concrete above that drop ceiling. There's wires that come down and hold that drop ceiling. That's what's attached to it. And we try to mount as close to those wires as possible. That's going to increase the stability. We have put up, multiple 4x4s and lots of divas and all kinds of other things. Now you can't start putting in, some, HMIs, but you can put a more weight than you would think on that, and you won't need that for this. What you want to look for here is, being able to attach yeah, that one you can't. That one would have a standard background there, I think. The thing you want to think about there is and it's not really, is there a kit? You have to think about what you're trying to do. Like, who are you trying to light? And sometimes the other thing that we do a lot of is we build what we call, I literally was just using that pen and then I set it down. Anyway, that's amazing. What you want to think about there is we also do what we call goal posting. And the goal posting means that we have two C-stands and we run a bar between them. And what that allows, it really quickly, you can lower it down, put all your lights on it, and then raise it up. You know, two people, you just go 1, 2, 3, and you raise the whole thing up. The big thing is with your lighting with glass, you need to get those lights up as high as you can. So you need to get them up because it's angle of incidence equals. Sorry, I'm a little distracted because I was just drawing something for you, and then I did something with my pen. It's kind of amazing. Anyway, angle of incidence equals angle of reflection. So the lower your lights are, the more likely they're going to hit your cameras. So as you move those lights up, that angle of incidence is going to go lower. And that's going to make it's going to miss your camera. And so you want to do that. Now, you're going to try to shade people nicely. But once you know that you're above that area, and think about, you can also attach those lights again if you have a drop ceiling, you attach them into the ceiling so they're above. What you're trying to do is get them as high as you can on the person without creating shadow on their eyes. So you're trying to not have it so vertical to them that you start picking up their eyebrow, their eyelids or not eyelids, but their eye sockets coming down on them. But try to get it up that high, and you're gonna do much better as far as how to light them. And you can also use the C-stands and just have those arms go out. If you start extending those arms out and putting lights on the end of them, just remember you need a lot of sandbags. So big foot forward and then sandbag it to make sure that nothing goes anywhere. So yeah, go ahead, CJ.
The other thing that I would mention is just in terms of actual kits. I've had a lot of luck just in the studio that I'm in here with the newer RGB adjustable lights. They come with you can buy a nice little softbox for them. So here would be just an example of what those would look like. You can get a nice little softbox for them that opens in and out very easily. There you can see it kind of in this picture here. And it's nice because they have a Bluetooth connection. So if you are a small crew and you're trying to look at your monitor and you don't have someone that can say, hey, can you go adjust this light? Can you go adjust that light? You can on your phone adjust color temperature, adjust brightness, and then that way dial in your shot without having to run all over the place. And they're not too expensive for what you get. You can get 660 lumen editions or 1200 lumen editions. That's what I have in this room. And like I said, I like them a lot.
And if you can get away with it, do a question where you upload this and then send us a link of that image and ask the question. We can be much more specific if you send us a page with 3 or 4 pictures of your space, and we'll look at them and do a kind of a bit of a teardown of what we would do. Next question.
All righty, next question from Sandwell Nordvik in Norway, and here on the panel, I have an update on the PNG LUTs that OBS and vMix use.
Go ahead, Samuel.
Yeah, well, I brought this up last week because I found out that in vMix and OBS, then you can import these your PNG LUTs that look like this. And actually what it is, it's just like a reference. You have a standard reference image that you can bring into any image editor. And you can pull the curves and whatever on the image. And then what you do, you apply the same setting to the reference. So it's more like a filter than a LUT. So you see here I applied just pulled some curves and changed it. But the useful thing is that you can do with it, and at least in some cases, like if you have like a black, white, black, you have like some text on a white background with black text, then you can invert it. So you can just use it like a simple filter to invert black to white, for example. So that's probably the most useful thing you can do with it. Of course, the cube LUTs will be a lot more accurate than this here, but it's like a simple way that you can edit in any image editor.
I'm just very curious how it actually works. Like it doesn't look like a LUT that I've seen before. So I think that my curiosity is, I mean, I kind of understand what it does. I don't understand. There is we're going to have to do some more research on this because I just, I just don't understand I don't understand the structure. like when I look at it, like with a LUT, I understand the structure. With this, I don't understand what it's actually doing. And maybe it may be just as accurate as a LUT. And I just I don't know. Go ahead, Samuel.
Yeah, well, what I've seen that's less accurate than a LUT. So it's more like a filter. And then you have like this, you have the reference image, and then you apply the change to the image. So it's like a filter that when you import it back into the reference, then it calculates the difference between the reference and the original.
Well, that's kind of what a LUT does is doing the difference. It's just that it's I understand what it's doing. Like that's not my question is how does that ping turn into how is it reading that ping and turning it into something that is adjusting color, which doesn't calculate for me? Go ahead, John.
Yeah. So Samuel, are you essentially saying that you make your edits somewhere else and then you apply your same edits to this reference, and what the tool is actually doing, what OBS is doing is it's ingesting the updated edit, and it's kind of like backwards defining what the LUT is, because it's I know what this should look like, and I'll just kind of do the opposite.
It's calculating the difference based on the changes you apply to the PNG. But I can post the image, a link in the chat that explains a little bit more of kind of at least.
I asked ChatGPT. That's what I do. Because we use 3D, we use cubes. We don't use these PNGs, and so since we have time, I'll just read you what it said, and then you can just decide. This might point us in the right direction. It says PNG or lookup table essentially means mapping or transforming the cube values in an image for color grading and color correction purposes. It's a form of a 3D LUT because after it can alter the hue, saturation, and brightness values of an image. Here's how a ping LUT typically works. Data structure. It's a pre-calculated array of output values for each color channel. The ping LUT is often a file with a ping extension, and it contains image representation of this array. Okay, that's starting to make more sense to me. Color mapping, when you apply a ping to the image, the software reads the original color values of each pixel and then refers to the corresponding mapped value in the LUT. The changes in the pixel color are then defined by the LUT. Okay, yeah. So each one of those little gradients, it appears, is, according to this, is it's defining that transform in that array. But I still need I'll dig into that more. Okay, it's interesting. Next question.
All right, next question from Douglas Carmichael. I've been experimenting with the use of Caddy as a reverse proxy to access web services hosted on my home server. Could Caddy or a similar reverse proxy VPN on a virtual private server be a useful backup for Cloudflare tunnels?
You would have to ask that on a Friday when we have some more of our internet folks here to talk about that. I don't know. I don't know enough about Caddy to answer that question. Go ahead, Samuel.
Well, I don't specifically have any experience with Caddy as the service, but Cloudflare is just a brand, so there's different brands you can do, and to do also reverse proxies. But if you're going to do a reverse proxy directly into your network, then you'll have to open some ports on your end to get it to work. Well, on the Cloudflare tunnels, then it routes through Cloudflare.
Yeah, I do think that because of the issue and because it actually affected us, I think that one of the things we may have to think about is, what are the backups? So that'll be something for us to discuss as we move forward. Next question.
Next question from Douglas Carmichael. Oops, it disappeared. I'm sorry, from Vic D. from San Francisco, California. Blackmagic ATEM Production Studios 1, 2, and 4ME have looked the same since 2015. Have they been updated at all? If buying a used one, how can I tell if it's older or newer?
So the update ones will say there was an update for the 2ME 12G that went to 4ME. They added 4ME. They added 2 more MEs to it because they had the processing power to do that. Otherwise, you're looking for and all I know is the ones that are, I think, 2U that say 4ME on them are the newer versions of that. So those are the things to kind of look at there. They have the advantage of being 4K, not as expensive, but I think that I would probably at this point buy constellations or wait. I wouldn't probably jump into buying older switchers. They are very long in the tooth, and one of the big problems with those older production studios is they don't have the ability they don't have Teradeks at every input. So what it means is that they can't change your frame rate or resolution on the fly. So everything, whatever you define as the switcher, it's only going to see the inputs that match it perfectly. And I got used to that, but now that I'm not used to it, I would not want to go back to that. That's pretty, it really slows you down. So I'd be careful about updating. I think that you're going to see Blackmagic has started to go, they kind of spent some time in the consumer world with these little mini extremes and everything else. But I have a feeling they're going to go back. We're starting to see more releases in the more professional area. So I think I think we'd probably wait for that. Next question.
Next question from Matthias Jalita in Helsinki, Finland. Thoughts on the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 compared to an Insta 360 Link as a webcam? Can you connect these USB webcams to an ATEM Mini from the QR drop?
So I think you can actually. So here's the interesting thing is that number one is I think that the Pocket 3 has an HDMI output for live streaming. I believe I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it has a mini HDMI or micro HDMI in it. And so I thought I saw it there, or I thought it set up for live stream. Maybe it's only live streams from itself. Anyway, so I think that is the case. If that's the case, if you have an HDMI out, then you could actually absolutely connect it. It is a larger sensor than what you have with the Insta 360 and with the OBSBot. It is probably got better controls and follow and everything else, but it's also twice as expensive. So I think that is the that's the challenge that you have. It's a lot more expensive, but it has a lot more features to it as well. At first, I was like, "Oh, I really think that this would be a great. This could be a really, really great web camera," and I've kind of backed away from it a little bit, thinking it might be a little too complicated to use as a webcam to send out to someone, because that's all I would do with it. It's not like I would use it as a webcam. I've got film size cameras, so I don't think I would use it necessarily. And then I thought, it'd be really good because the advantage is really being able to control that head. So if they built a good API that allows us to control that relatively effectively remotely, then I might be interested in sending it out. The issue is the OBSBot has an API, but the software that ships with it is not very good. The Insta 360 has great software, but no API. So we kind of are constantly struggling, it seems, with companies that are almost closing the deal. They're just not quite finishing it. Like they have almost the perfect little web camera, and then they just don't do the one thing and they've all decided that one thing is something different for them. Go ahead, CJ.
The last iteration of this, before it had the rotating screen on the actual device, used to have these funky little things that would slide into the bottom to let you plug directly into Lightning or directly into USB-C. This one is just USB-C on the bottom, so I'm not sure if that's going to support.
So it doesn't have a HDMI out?
But it might do HDMI over through the USB-C, I'm not sure.
Right.
But they try to make these little modular things where the carrying case is going to hold some accessories, but having a 1-inch chip, though, is pretty exciting, I think.
The footage looks pretty good. I mean, it definitely has it looks good. It doesn't look great. And I think that was the problem that I had. I felt that when I saw it, I was like, I don't know if it's competitive with my iPhone. And when I say it's not competitive with my iPhone, then I get into, well, why don't I just use an Osmo that has an iPhone? So I think that I don't know if I'm not sold that the that the camera here is as good as what I have with an iPhone 15, and the ability to capture the way the iPhone 15 captures. You go, CJ.
Oh, and that was going to be part of my comment actually too, is that I intercut this with iPhone footage. It was the iPhone 14 versus the Osmo 2, but I thought, hey, this technically has a bigger sensor. This is going to be better. And then when I got it back, I was way happier with the iPhone footage than with this footage. And I was like, man, this is, I was really bummed because I went out and I got this camera specifically for 2 shots. And like, I should have put it on the Osmo gimbal for the iPhone or a Ronin or something.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the challenge there. All right. Well, we have back in the old days, we used to have shorter shows on Saturday. We always want to be available every day for people both to train here, but also for people to ask questions. We're here for everybody to ask those questions. But in the early days, this was usually an hour. so even the first show was an hour. So we're closer to our early day setup here. So thank you to all the producers for the questions that you asked. These were great questions. We didn't have as many today as we normally have, but it totally is it was a good show. We had lots of great questions, covered a lot of good information. Thank you to the panelists here. Can't do this without you. And it's so good to see all of you here. A lot of faces that we haven't seen as often. John hasn't been here for a little while. It's good to have you, John. And CJ, great job at doing the Q&A, reading those questions for us. And Samuel, it's always good to have you on the panel. So we had a nice little, and we just moved through the questions very surgically. Oh, we got one more. We got one more kind of wandering through here. Let's go to the last question here.
Phil Ross from Northern Ireland, with the ATEM Mini Extreme having 2 HDMI outputs, does that only send 2 of the same inputs out, or can I do different sources? If I wanted to isolate 8 inputs to send out, would I have to get a different unit?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, on the ATEM Mini Extreme, you can choose what you send out on each of the 2 outputs.
Yeah, and if you, on the ATEM Extreme, the Mini Extreme SDI, you have 4 outputs, which you can define as well. So that you have a couple more. If you want more than that, yeah, you absolutely have to go up the next level. I think it's the 1ME or the 2ME is going to give you. The 2ME is going to give you 10 outputs, and then you could be able to define all of those. Go ahead, CJ.
And just to show you what that looks like, I brought up the software control here. If you go up into outputs, I've got the Extreme ISO sitting here, output 1, and then you can choose what you'd like to send to it. Any of your sources plus the multi-view, same thing with output 2. And also, it's really nice if you throw open Mix Effect Pro, then you have, I think, the best control over the multi-view that you could possibly. So if you had to isolate all 8 of your sources, you could either build it in the software preferences within the ATEM software control so that you have camera 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or you could design it within Mix Effect.
Next question.
Next question from Douglas Carmichael. One of the reasons why David Baszucki, Roblox founder, went to RTO or return to office is that in-person meetings are, quote, more collaborative and creative and less fatiguing. With John's success in implementing OH2 in his company, could it help change that?
Go ahead, John.
Humans have a propensity of making a decision and then justifying it after the fact. I suspect there were other reasons why the CEO or CTO or whatever decided to move people internally again. And then they read an article somewhere that cited some academic study that's talked about meeting fatigue with virtual meetings and made that justification after the fact. I think poorly run meetings are fatiguing, whether you're in virtual or in person. Hybrid meetings are incredibly fatiguing, even when they're run well. And I think it's really up to the organization to choose what they want and deal with the consequences either way.
Go ahead, CJ.
Yeah, in my opinion, what makes the meeting fatigue is when it is difficult to read someone's expressions and when it's difficult to hear the intonation in someone's voice. When someone hasn't done what this group does and really pay attention to looking and sounding really great, it adds a ton of friction. And our brains are wired to try and fill in all of those missing pieces of information, all of that nonverbal communication, intonation, body language, etc. I find that, and I know Alex says all the time, video and audio are the new suit and tie. When I go into meetings looking the way that I look in preparation for being in this program, I am insanely more effective in terms of how my message is communicated, but also my confidence level is in an entirely different stratosphere than it was when I was trying to get by with the C920. So I would say if someone is serious about having a remote workforce, they also need to be serious about this is the standard that we expect. And in all the money that you're saving in not having to rent an office, buy people a Brio, buy people a light. Tell them this is what's expected of you, and this is how you are to present our company out to the rest of the world. This is our brand.
And I had a conversation with someone at a fairly large company about that. Like, you should be buying everybody kits so that they all look good. And he goes, if we bought them kits, they'll never come back. Like we, it was definitely like, like we want them to come back to the office. Go ahead, John.
I realized I didn't answer the second half of the question, which is if we implemented office hours formatting or framework to an organization, would that make the meetings less fatiguing? I would say probably not. I get way more tired sitting on the panel in office hours than I do a regular meeting, but I feel like that's me exercising. So when I get into a regular virtual meeting, it's a lot easier for me to do that. And the reason is you have to just be constantly thinking and totally present when you're in the panel in office hours. And in regular meetings, I think one of the reasons people get fatigued is they're not present in the meeting. They're sitting, checking their email, looking at other things, concerned about how they appear instead of engaging with the content.
The famous, can you repeat that question? That is the broadcast of, I wasn't really listening, but I just heard my name. And I have learned the nice way to do this is to say, John, and then ask the question. But you don't want to ask the question and then go, what do you think, John? That's when you get I've learned in virtual meetings the proper etiquette is say the person's name first and then throw them the question, and then they have the answer almost all the time. I'm not there to call them out. It's not like I've never done it. Go ahead, CJ.
The one thing that I notice as a difference between if I'm in the office or if I'm working remotely is that when I'm in the office, and I don't think this is a me problem, but other people, when they physically see me, remember the things that they need to tell me and that they want to talk to me about. I've kind of fantasized about having almost like a hangout where you have a whole group of people that are just on Zoom or just on Teams or whatever your platform is, and it's just an open mic. It's almost like comms where not everybody's mic is open, but like if you need someone, you can call on them, and then it's almost as if you were sitting together. And if you need to step away, turn it off.
And that's what we call after hours. So is the idea that people, a lot of times you go into after hours and a whole bunch of everything will be off. But if you start talking, people start turning their things on. They hear it and they jump in. And so that's one thing to think about there. I think that it really depends on how you design it. I've talked to people who own companies or run companies that have been they've been remote the whole time, and for them it doesn't. I mean, this is for years or decades, and it doesn't flinch to them that they're doing a lot of creative things. They're trading notes on a lot of things, and they're making that all work. And it's not a problem for them. Now they do get together. So what they do is they have oftentimes weekly or monthly things where everybody in a city will get together. And these are companies of a couple hundred people, or a company I'm thinking about. So everybody in the city will get together about once a month for like a TGIF. And then every quarter, the region gets together and they all go to a hotel and the company pays for it and puts them all up and they all get to see each other. And then about once a year, they bring in everybody from the company to one location. It's usually something different. It's usually kind of luxurious. And they said, well, we can afford to do something luxurious because we don't have, we're not paying rent. And the point was rent for 200 people. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of money, and so anyway, I think that's one of the, kind of the upsides of that. And so I think that the problem that companies are going to have is that their highest performing employees, many of them want to work at home. They want a little bit more flexibility. It's not that they're going to quit when you say that they have to come back to the office, but they get a lot more active. I've seen this already on the back end. They get a lot more active on LinkedIn. They start posting how-tos on LinkedIn. They start doing things on it. What they're doing, if you're not smart, as a company, what they're doing is they're laying out all the tracks over the next 6 to 12 months to leave. And so the thing is that they're prepping their exit so they can find just the right job that allows them to work from home. And I think that's going to be the future. Quick reminder, by the way, that we have a panelist meeting. You can go to officehours.global/panelist. And we have a panelist meeting at 9. Most likely we're going to finish this before that. We'll have a little bit of a break. But at 9 o'clock, we'll have the new panelist meeting. So if you have questions about being a panelist and you want to know how to do that, you can join us at 9. I'll put a little announcement out too in Discord. That was close. That was good. It's all up to me to get the right time. So it's not. That's good. Next question.
This one's from Kyle Hammond in Chicago. I was given an HP Pro Desk with the caveat that due to its age, lack of support, and incompatibility with Windows 11, this device should not be considered reliable for any critical applications. Is this a security issue?
Samuel?
Well, you don't want to, on a corporate network, you don't want to use it there because there's so many different servers. But in a home environment, you shouldn't have any problem using it, as long as it's not like a super old device. I have a few old HPs that I'm using for different things, like just like extra servers and stuff. But it's not like mission critical. And of course, if it's old hardware, there's a lot greater likelihood that it could fail. The other thing, Windows 11, if you really wanted to run Windows 11 on an older device, there's a simple registry that you can do to get it to work, but it's not recommended.
Go ahead, CJ.
Full disclosure, I didn't know what an HP Pro Desk was. I thought it was a sort of dock. So for anybody that doesn't know, it's just a little slimline desktop computer. Anytime you're running an older machine, you've got to think about just where is it living. Again, I have some 32-bit applications that I need to run for a development environment at work. I don't bring that desktop into the office. I do that when I'm at home because I don't want to bring a Mojave machine that's not getting security updates and putting it as a potential security threat. But if you're at home, I don't know. It's not. I guess to me, it's not as much of a concern, especially if if it's a network that you manage, you can go out of your way to put up some walls around that box if security is a concern of yours.
Next question.
Next question from Douglas Carmichael. Steinberg recently released Cubase 13, which includes a revamped user interface. Has anyone used Cubase before?
I have used Cubase before, but wow, long time before. So long ago that I can still remember kind of what it looks like. It's fine. Like and I'll be interested to see what they did with the update. The problem is that there are so many well-developed systems there. I'm not sure. I think what you're doing in some cases is supporting the user base that you already have. So you want them to you want to keep the user base that you have. I don't know if Cubase is making any real strides in increasing their user base, but they need to make sure that it feels modern or the current user base that they have will leave. But I don't think that it's kind of people may disagree with me, but it seems kind of like a legacy product at this point. Go ahead, Samuel.
Yeah, well, I've worked a little bit with a church that uses the Cubase in their system, and what I've heard from them is that it's quite clunky. If you have you can only input 24 channels, or else you have to update to a Pro version to get more channels. So I would probably recommend Reaper instead.
Yeah, go
if
TJ.
You're looking for alternative.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to say that it comes as a included software bundled. When on certain instruments or certain audio interfaces, right, they come with a Cubase. So I think that's what's keeping it alive. It's those licensing agreements.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Next question.
Next question's from Florence Donald in Silver Spring, Maryland. What are suggestions to encourage people to turn on cameras in virtual meetings, especially corporate venues? A culture of hiding behind a static image is pervasive.
Good, John.
We start the employee's first day and I say, I expect you to be present in meetings. Part of being present is having your camera on normally. There's exceptions to every rule, so if you're feeling particularly bad in a day, that's fine. But if I see you with your camera off regularly, that's a pattern and it becomes a problem, and I'll give you feedback and coaching based on that. We say that to every one of our employees. Once a meeting has about 3 people with their camera on, most people start turning their camera on. And so if you can have you and a core group of people regularly have the camera on, you'll be able to basically run the meeting because people listen to the people they can see in the meetings. In trainings, if it's a group that I don't know at the start of the training, I'll say, okay, everyone, please turn your camera on. It helps me see whether or not you're following along or if you're particularly confused. I can't help you if I can't see you. So make sure all your cameras are on, please.
Go ahead, CJ.
When we have new software deployments, we always talk about if there is an adoption, then it's a giant waste of time and resources. And the one thing they always bring up is having an executive champion is the buzzword that they like to call it. But in real talk, you need someone who's in a leadership position who is passionate about setting the expectation that this is something that is important to us as a business, and this is something that we want to embrace. If you don't have that and you leave it up to individuals, then it's a lot harder to motivate people to get that way. But I think the best thing you can do is when you start showing up in meetings and you look and sound really good and you own the meeting, people are going to start to catch on that, okay, this is what I need to do if I want to flex. Jimmy buys a nicer suit than me. I need to buy a nice suit, and then I'm going to feel and get the respect of the room. Guess what? Fast forward 2023, you look great in a meeting, you're owning the meeting. Somebody else is going to want that kind of control. They'll follow suit.
Yeah, I will agree that I made the mistake of, and I've talked about this in the past. Sometimes I talk about it in in meetings about this, because with my setup, which is okay, and right now tilted a little bit. I hit my tripod last night. I suddenly realized it was like, but my setup's, it's better than average for most corporate meetings, and I feel like it's kind of middle of the road for our group, because we have so many people here that have great setups. But one of the things that I talk about is that for many, many years I wouldn't get on the video meetings. I was doing Hangouts for a business, and I would just call in. I just didn't like, so I understand the resistance to feeling like you're on and doing the setup and doing all the things. And then also, especially not feeling like you're happy with what you have that you're presenting yourself with. And, I've learned over time that if you invest in what it looks like and how it works, that you actually enjoy being on the meeting and you enjoy turning the camera on, and you get more of your ideas done if your camera's on. It is 100%, as CJ was talking about, and John alluded to as well. You get more done that you wanted to get done by showing up, turning on the camera, and looking and sounding good. It's just, and it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be about how you look. It should be all about your ideas and the quality of the idea. But it's never that way. Deserve's got nothing to do with it. Just to quote Unforgiven, it doesn't matter what your idea is if you don't present it well. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it's a good idea or not a good idea. If you're not good at presenting your ideas well, and how you look and turning on your camera and giving people FaceTime is part of doing that well. And so explaining to people that, and then now I didn't do it at first as a passive aggressive thing, but I do it now, is that I hide all non-cameras. So if I have, it's easier for me to look at rather than seeing a big sea of and then I pay all the attention to the people who have their cameras on. So and I do it because it's just easier. It's easier for me to focus, and it's easier for me to look at it. Some people need to not have it on. They're driving, they're doing other things. So I understand it. And if they raise their digital hand or pop up or start to talk, I'm fine to talk to them. But I'm not conscious that they're there if their camera's off. That's the reality. And I'm pretty open about that. Yeah, go ahead, CJ.
Yeah, we had a saying that we used to preach to our sales guys that suit up and show up is half the battle. And we've all had interactions with people that we're considering buying something from. And like Alex said, whether we like it or not, the person who ironed their pants and doesn't have a stain on their shirt and is well kept in terms of their hair or facial hair or everything else, there are in data visualization, we call it precognitive attributes. That's a nicer way than saying prejudices. But we make a ton of decisions about someone based on the way that they present themselves. And this is no different. The one thing that I want to specifically caution against doing if you want people to turn their cameras on during meetings is don't if your system has the switch that says video is on by default, don't turn that on. That is going to make people extremely uncomfortable. They need to be in control of whether their image is showing up.
By the way, I often say that the greatest gift, the greatest present that you can give people is to be present. And when your camera's off, whether you like it or not, people kind of assume that you're not present. You're doing something else. And one thing that, as a note, even when you're there, if your eyes are scanning and you're looking around, people will also assume you're checking your email. And so this pose that you see right here like this, I use often when I'm listening. And the reason that I'm using it looks like I'm just listening to you like this and I'm just doing it. I'm communicating something really important to you that I'm not doing anything else. You can see both my hands. It's a really interesting thing that I've learned that people will pay more attention to. Like, they're more excited when you're listening to them. When you sit like this, or I'll sit like this. But I'm doing something that looks very semi-casual, but I'm showing you both my hands. Now, I don't do it in this meeting because I'm actually doing a lot of other things. We're like trying to figure out how to answer your question, and we're doing other things. And sometimes I sit down, I'm trying to find something for somebody, and I'm taking notes or I'm putting things down. So it's not like you always have to do it, but a solid third to half of the meeting, you'll see me sitting like this. And I'm doing it now. I do it naturally now, but I started doing it on purpose because I wanted people to know that both my hands are not doing something and I'm just listening to what they have to say. Super powerful, powerful way to connect with people. And it also keeps you from doing something else, and allows you to stay present to just listening to them. And I will say the one tool that we're starting to use more often is the AI tool that takes all the notes, which means I don't have to take notes. And it for people who are open to that, having the machine take notes of the notes are amazing. It's really better than anything I've ever typed. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, and I'll add, if you're a boss, part of your job is to give feedback to your employees, and that includes how they present themselves, both verbally and non-verbally. So I give feedback to my employees, and I say things like, your camera is a little bit dark, and it's causing you to look blurry, and you look less good than you could otherwise. You might want to try putting a light behind the computer, or give suggestions like that to my employees, especially those I work more closely with.
Well, and one of the things that's important is that if you're coaching folks that don't want to work in the office, they don't want to return the RTO, they're trying to avoid that, they want to work from home. Wow. Like, to not have a great studio at home and work from home is cray. Like, just insane to not have a great setup at home like that. You are not paying for gas. You are not driving for 2 hours a day. You are not buying horrible sandwiches at I won't name any brands that are near your office. You're not doing all of that. You're able to stay at home and make your meals and do your thing and not have to drive so much and save all that money and time. Spend some of that on your studio. Look good. It is a great way to stay remote. Next question.
I just got to jump in. That question answer was worth the price of admission today. It's just those little things where you're like, wow, okay. Anyway, sorry.
Really good question. Thank you for that.
Douglas Carmichael, has anyone ever tried Zoom Spots, now Zoom Huddles? It sounds like it could be the open space you talked about. There's a link.
Yeah, it's a persistent meeting. Now, we've done this for years with Hangouts and Zoom meetings and so on and so forth. We just leave them open all the time. Office hours gets opened. And so I think Zoom Spots is a good, solid, more organized version of that. But I do think that you can do it now with Zoom meetings. You might have to refresh it, I think, once a day or something like that. I think we do that right now. But we've done that with Hangouts where we just leave a window open. We used to have an office in San Rafael and an office in DC, and most days there was a window that we could just look over and talk to the person that was in DC about things. So it had that, and if he needed a moment to take a call, he just turns it off. And that's the power of using these, is people can be available most of the time, but if they have to have a meeting, they don't have to walk away from their desk, which is what happens when you are packed in like a herd of cattle into your office. What we call the open office is cattle herding employees. Next question.
Next question comes in from Florence Donald again from Silver Spring, Maryland. Does Microsoft Teams have a setting to hide cameras that are off, similar to the Zoom feature?
Go ahead, CJ.
I use Teams at work. I have not seen this setting, and doing some Googling around, it seems that the answer is no, although it was a user voice thread that got a lot of votes to Microsoft back in 2020. I will mention that Microsoft did just completely rewrite Teams. So now there's Teams Classic, which was the old hodgepodge where they kind of bolted a bunch of things together. And now there's new Teams that was completely rewritten to be actual intentional about all the features. So maybe there's an opportunity to revisit this issue with Microsoft, but as of right now, it doesn't look like it.
Go ahead, John.
That's right. There's no way to hide all non-video participants, but Teams will automatically, in whatever gallery you have, show the video participants first. So what I do is I put the meeting content with the gallery at the top, partially to help me with my own personal eye contact. And when I resize my window, it limits the number of gallery viewer people I see. And then so you can limit seeing non-video people.
Yeah. But I think hopefully the lesson from today is you probably want to turn your camera on. Again, I don't know how you tell other people this, but again, as someone who has resisted it in the past for years, my first couple of years of being in lots and lots of meetings, because I went from being in a couple meetings, like all in-person meetings, to 6 hours of online meetings almost overnight in 2012. So suddenly I was in six hours a day of online meetings, and I resisted it for the first, 4 or 5 years, like that I didn't like my camera on. And there was some point in maybe it was like 3 or 4 years, because sometime in 2015 or 2016, I started turning my camera on. I realized people listened to me differently. They did more of the things that I asked us to do. They listened to me more seriously. More of my ideas were moving through. And that's the big difference, is that suddenly you're able to move things through. So it's crazy to leave your phone. If you were in a corporate environment and you have any hope to move up, it's crazy to turn your camera off. Or if you have ideas that you want to move forward, it's crazy to turn your camera off. It's just, you want to, and I don't get out very much from my house. And the main reason is I have this little setup, and I can draw and I can talk and I can do all those things. And that helps me move my ideas down. And I don't have it anywhere else. I don't have it at the office. I don't have an office right now, but I don't have it at an office. I don't have it in other places. I only have it in my house. And so if I have like lots of meetings that only have a half an hour break, it means I'm not leaving today. Like I might walk out and look at my pool, or look at the mountains or whatever. But then I go back to work. So anyway, I think that it's really, really important to, because I try to do everything I can, and not even to come in from my phone. Like for business meetings, there's other meetings that I'll jump in and do things. But for business meetings with clients especially, I'm right where I'm at right now. And I look exactly the way I look right now. And because it's important, it moves things forward. Next question.
Next question from Kyle Hammond in Chicago, Illinois. I was in a venue this week that seemed ripe for a digital-first space. Is there documentation similar to OH 2.0 setup that would be needed to make an ideal digital-first space?
There isn't. That's probably a good one of those labs that we should just talk about digital-first events that we do in the next couple months, because we have time to noodle. So that's a really good one. There's no real documentation about it, but we've done all pieces. We've never done the perfect what I consider the perfect digital first event, because it's just, we've done all the pieces of it. We've done the streaming from the expo, we've done virtual point-to-points, we've done all those things. We get most of it done. And we've done ones that are nearly perfect virtual events where there's no speakers that are in the room and there's people on the thing, like all those pieces. But we haven't been able to kind of get someone to let us piece all of those pieces together. We're so close. And we're talking about something next year that might be that. So stay tuned. Next question.
Next question is from me. Update on Osmo 3 as a webcam. I was doing some Googling during one of the other questions where I didn't have anything that I could contribute. And I wanted to follow up about using the Osmo as a webcam. It does support UVC. So it can work as a USB webcam to your computer. If you wanted to get that into HDMI, you'd have to do some more configuring. But for now, that looks like a really nice way to get at it.
Because it has external controls, what would be kind of interesting is to see if you can use the UVC to HDMI, like Osbot makes one, a couple other folks do, and plug it into your switcher, but then use external controllers, because it's not designed to necessarily be controlled by that UVC connection to do all the things that it does. So that might be an interesting potential there. So, yeah, it's cool. Like, I love the fact that if you go back to that image there for a second, they show that camera, they put that camera in a place that you absolutely would not want to put that camera. You know, like they have this little, like, I'm going to look at you from the table up at you. We call those, up the nose shots. Like it's not pleasing. That's not where you'd put it, but it's because they ship it with a tripod and they're like, how do we handle this tripod? We can't show someone something else like it should be suspended right over top of the screen. That wouldn't make sense. So anyway, I think that's the challenge there.
There was a whole thread when Blackmagic did their announcements in Discord about all of the improbable production situations that are used in the marketing literature. It's like, young woman sets up her live stream while there's 40,000 people in the stands. And this is another one where like the marketing people somebody needs to be like the liaison to say, you need to go live this feature before you're allowed to sell it.
If you ever do a search for the process of, or it's like ad agent, I think you do a search for ad agency swing set. And there's a great like what the first meeting was about, what the marketers said it would be, what the engineering team built, they all these things, and at the end is what the client actually wanted, or what they actually needed. And so anyway, there's some truths there. All right, thanks again to the panelists, to our fine producers, and to the incredible team coming here 7 days a week, making, and everybody dancing with this whole process. So 7 days a week of actually doing it. The incredible development team that just, came up and made sure that we were able to go from one whole system to another without almost any hiccup. Amazing. And then of course the incredible team that's always trying to figure out what we're going to do next. So we really appreciate everybody's contribution. Quick reminder again that we are going to have our new panelist meeting. This is if you're interested in being a panelist and you want to find out more information. That'll be at 9 a.m. I'll post it actually in Discord. So that's the new panelist. So if you want to, and we always love to have new panelists come in and be part of this conversation. So we'll talk about what it takes to do that. If you're an existing panelist and you want to just say what your experience is and give some of the guidance of what you learned and your journey through that, you're more than welcome to come as well. So that's at 9 o'clock. In about 40 minutes, but otherwise we're going to let you all go. We traveled 85,000 miles, 137,000 kilometers. That's 677 million bananas for scale. Let's go ahead and jump into After Hours. Sorry about my audio today. I hurt my foot again, my foot got hurt again, and my air conditioner is behind a bunch of things. And when I sat down, it took me a long time to get down here. And I just barely was on time. And I was like, I don't think I have enough time or energy to climb through what's there. So
for what it's worth, there's no room tone on this side.
No, you'll hear it a little bit. You'll hear this weird rattling because I turned so this is what it sounds like. Hold on. Let's see if we have, that's what's there. And here it has like a little, it sounds like a little water. You hear the water? Sounds like I have running water.
I hear water in my room. I'm sorry.